That's wonderful. That's what boards are already doing. Work with them. Collaboration means you are working together. What has happened is we've unilaterally removed a successful program out of the education system in this province. Madam Speaker, thank you.
Thank you. The time has elapsed for this resolution. I now call the Opposition House Leader.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. That completes the Opposition Liberal business for today, and I would defer to the Government Deputy House Leader to give us tomorrow's hours of business. Yeah.
Thank you. I now recognize the Government Deputy House Leader.
Madam Speaker, I would like to thank the Opposition House Leader. Tomorrow, after daily routine and question period, the government will be calling Bill 7, and Bill 7 is an act respecting the administration of justice. And if time allows, there will be a resumption of speech in reply. I now move that the House do rise to meet again at the hour of 2 o'clock tomorrow, and the House hours will be from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The motion before us is the House does now rise and meet again tomorrow from between the hours of 2 to 6. All in favour? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. We are now at the point of the hour of interruption, and at this point a motion has been submitted by the member from Pictou East, and it reads, therefore be it resolved that all members of the House of Assembly recognize and congratulate this government for honouring its commitment to making life better for families in Nova Scotia. I now recognize the member from the honourable member from Pictou East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. What a pleasure it is for me to rise in the House and speak on the resolution before us tonight. Because, Madam Speaker, for the last 20 months, the lives of Nova Scotians have been made better. In very difficult times, the lives of Nova Scotians have been made better. And Madam Speaker, in relationship to the last 3 days, the lives of Nova Scotians have been changed fundamentally for the better. On Monday, the Premier went through a checklist, Madam Speaker, of the promises made in the election campaign. And that checklist was very substantial. It was overshadowed somewhat by the fact that at the same time he announced a $447 million surplus for last year. A $447 million surplus for last year. And the fact that only 7 times in the last 50 years have we been paying down the debt. So I think that is a very substantive Monday evening. On Tuesday, we had a budget delivered in this House. A budget was delivered in this House that contained many new initiatives, also in difficult times. A lot of new initiatives. And today, we had the Minister of Health and Wellness come before us and talk about the establishment of the first of 4 collaborative emergency centers in this province, in Parsboro. That is a major, major accomplishment. Now, Madam Speaker, we have also dealt with so many issues in relationship to health. And I only have 10 minutes here to speak tonight. So I want to talk about a few things that are happening in Pictou County as well. But I'll intersperse what's happening across the province with what is happening in Pictou County. But I do want to mention the fact that we will have additional nurse practitioners in this province, that the 811 nurse line is going to receive more funding and more importance. And I have had the opportunity for family members to comment to me on how good this service is, because it has been used by family and friends, and it has been a great service in this province. My constituency assistant used it on an occasion and got tremendous results as well. So I want to deal with some of the issues in Pictou County as well that are of great importance and certainly helping the lives of Pictonians. And I would be remiss if I didn't have a few comments about Pictou County. But all three members from Pictou County were very excited yesterday to have in the budget $2.6 million, which is only the start. And I sort of take exception with the headline in the local paper today, ER funding figure less than expected. Well, this is a project that was estimated at over $16 million, and you can't begin and end the construction in 1 year. And we know that this $2.6 million is only the beginning of this project, and that it will go through to completion, and we will have that ER up and running in a reasonable period of time. Now, I want to comment on the minister. The minister was in that ER last summer on a very hot day and saw the need that existed. And she personally was moved by the congestion that there was there, and the number of people that were in stretchers in the ER and so on. And this is something that the three members from Pictou County have worked very, very hard to bring to fruition. And I'm very proud that it was in the speech from the throne and that it was also in the budget. Now, jobs here is something that I could talk about at great length as well. And that's an initiative that is helping a lot of people around the province of Nova Scotia. And the thrust of jobs here, learning the right skills for good jobs, $28 million. We have many aspects of that, but growing the economy through innovation, $22.9 million, and helping businesses be more competitive globally, $2.15 million. And those are just a few of the things contained in jobs here. Jobs here are a very, very important aspect of life for Nova Scotians. And I'm proud to have had some input into that. And I commend the Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism for the leadership that he has shown in relationship to jobs here. And when I'm talking about jobs here, I have to talk about what happened in Trenton. 1/3 of the workforce at Trenton Works lived in my constituency. Over 1/3 lived in Pictou East. And the press at the time talked about 300 jobs being lost. Actually, there were about 1,200 jobs that were lost. The 1,200 had been reduced to 900 and some the 900 and some reduced to 600 and some, and when the doors finally shut, 300 people were put out of work. But in reality, we were talking 1,200. And what we have with Daewoo involved with the leadership of this government and taking 49% ownership of that facility, we have a new life in that project in Pictou County, a new life, Madam Speaker. I recently toured that facility, and we had 30 to 40 welders going to be hired the next week to bring the workforce up to about 70 or more. And we're on our way to 150, and that is only the beginning as we manufacture the wind towers and moving on to the blades in the near future. I wish I had more time.
Order.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now recognize the honourable member from Glace Bay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you. Thanks so much for this opportunity to speak on this resolution. Making life better for families is the theme, so I just wanted to sort of talk about what that means to me, and it certainly means a lot to me. I want to thank and recognize the member for Pictou East. I've got a great deal of respect for him, and I do believe he's in it for the right reasons. We disagree a lot politically, but he's got the coolest voice of anyone I've ever heard. So whenever he's talking, I'm listening, even if it doesn't make much sense. But anyway, I do slightly I disagree somewhat with the resolution and with the notion because this, to me, paints a picture of happy, warm, safe families all across the province. And I certainly don't see that all the time in Glace Bay, and happiness just isn't the case for a lot of people. And I just want to talk about a few of those examples. Being the critic for community services and working with the minister on a lot of the deep issues that we have in this province, the reality is, and it's a sad thing that we see, people are just, they don't make ends meet. And it's every day, and it's in every riding. And again, you know, I always go back to Glace Bay, but everywhere these are issues. And as a rich, you know, relatively rich country and a relatively rich province, I mean, the struggles we have are put us in a lot better shape than other places in the world, certainly. But we do have those issues, and we need a plan. Seniors, heating, drug, food costs are all rising, of course. We know that. The Minister of Community Services talked about the $15 increase, monthly increase for income assistance. That's not enough. I'm not saying it's helpful. It is certainly a commitment. I know the minister went to bat for that at budget time, and she did her best to increase that. $15 doesn't amount to a whole lot when it's in a single-parent household, and what it buys these days with the cost of living, the rising cost of living. It's certainly, I think, tough to see that that's going to make a deep impact. The usage of food banks has risen in this province 33% in the last 2 years. I just have some stats related to food banks that I think are important to have on the record. 50% of food bank supply goes to people on income assistance. Those ends don't meet. If you're on income assistance through community services and you're using the food bank, then I think that's a pretty telltale sign that you don't have enough to get by and you have to rely on other sources. So, you know, thank God for the food banks. 20% of food bank usage is through people who have jobs. So, you know, there's your category and your classification that we know as the working poor. They're working probably for a medical or dental plan, but at the end of the day, they've got to go and get food from a public source because they can't pay for it. Those ends don't meet. 10% are on pensions. 10% of people who use food banks are on pensions. So, you know, they're the golden years and they're the retirement years, and yet it's going to get a can of beans or some dry wheat to make a meal. So it's tough. 30% of those relying on food banks, this is certainly an extremely unfortunate part of the realities we live in, are children. So if anyone, and I know many of my colleagues watched the movie 4 Feet Up about the struggle with child poverty, this cycle of poverty, it's a very simplistic sort of model in terms of how people get trapped into it, but it's finding a path out is what the difficulty is. And there are tax credits that have been introduced, but they don't make up for the HST hike, or they don't make up for the home heating assistance that's been reduced, and that's just the reality. The stats I listed do affect many families, and while we come here and we banter and we debate and we try to change the budget and do those things, this is an everyday thing. People right now, they can't watch the legislature and they can't look at media reports because they're trying to figure out how to feed their family, how to clothe their kids for the next day, how to pay for the gas and keep the house warm. So very difficult things, and the priority is survival, and that's a tough thing to see that happens in this province. I do want to just quickly mention, and I think it's important, and the nature of it is political because it's always political, but I want the government side and the member to know, I will make you a guarantee that the user fee increases, I promise you, will hurt your support in this province, and this is why. That is one of the touch points for people. That is where you pay a bill, you get a certificate, you get an application, you do something like that, and that's where people see a contact with their provincial government. So people, and we read every day and we follow these things because it's our job, but people go about their lives, and they look and we all hear it. Everybody in this room hears it, all the members of this House hear it. There's no doctors. We're closing schools. My husband and wife and family are out west. We've got tremendous problems with our roads. We've got all these things that we can't deal with, or we're seen as not dealing with. Jobs, HST increases. Then all of a sudden, when people go to pay for simple things, it's a couple bucks more. I'm telling you, that couple bucks more will certainly make a difference because people's trust and their respect is at a very low level, and when they don't see the services increase and they see the fees increase, then they have a problem with it. So how am I doing for time there? Good. Okay, perfect. I do quickly want to mention something that happened today that I think is going to affect people and affect families, and it's in my backyard in the CBRM. I think what we've got to understand, and I know what the minister talked about the agreement and talked about sort of what was in the MOU. The reality is that this means $3 million next year. And again, I don't expect everybody to be following the line items for the CBRM budget, but I happen to, and I have for a while. $3 million is a significant number, and as that increases over the next few years, it's certainly significant. It's something we have to worry about. I truly believe the mayor announced that he wouldn't increase taxes this year, property taxes. Honest to God, the reason why he won't increase them is because people just can't absorb anymore. And that's the reality. They just don't have the money. People in Glace Bay do not have the money to pay more taxes, and that's just the truth. So the mayor can say, well, we're going to put a stop on taxes, but the reality is he has no choice. So what does that mean? If you're not raising revenue, you're cutting expenditures, so they're going to start to reduce services. And that's a reality. And when the minister said today we signed an MOU, not an IOU, I think that's going to grab people down home because they're going to see that with jobs. Jobs not here yet. Hopefully they will be here, and I trust that the member's right, and that will have an impact across the province. 18% unemployment is alarming in CBRM, and people who are there, a lot of people who are there who are working, they're there 8 days a month, and they go to Alberta. So they make great money, and they drive big trucks, and they go to Alberta for 8 days. But what about the other 20 days of the 21 days, 22 days of the month, when their kids are going to school and the single parent is raising them, and they're off living in a trailer, in a camp in a trailer in Alberta? That's certainly no life. And I do also want to quickly mention, because it is, to me, it is a provincial issue, and the MLA for Yarmouth, my good friend, talks about it a lot, and that is the Yarmouth Ferry. I think that's important. And I know that there's obviously conflicting attitudes and opinions on this, and the government sort of feels that the agreement that was there and the options that were available weren't valid. But 300 jobs, the largest hotel, major businesses, tourism plummeting. Those things are significant, and now even the churches are involved to sort of help with some of the social aspects. So I don't think families are jumping for joy in Yarmouth. I think the reality is, though, and I've seen this through the media reports and through my friend here and colleague, the people of Yarmouth, they're not going away and they're not giving up on this issue. So this is going to be an issue until the next election. It's going to be an issue after that, and it's going to go on forever because this is their lifeline and they're not going to give up, and certainly the MLA is not going to give up. So in closing, I just want to say that the bottom line is in this game is that there's limited resources, and the government has to make decisions, and we'll never obviously agree on that for philosophical reasons, for political reasons, and you are the government, you're a majority government, and you don't have to answer certainly to us. But these things affect us all, and to me, the people in Glace Bay, Yarmouth, Port Hawkesbury, Truro, they don't think things are great, and they're worried about the future, and the ends are not meeting. So rather than saying we're making things better for families, I think the government should say, we're doing our best to make things better, give us time and judge us based on our decisions, as opposed to things are getting better and they're better already, because a lot of people don't think things are better at this point, and it's a dangerous message to send. And finally, I just want to request to the government, please get the alders out of Digby, because the member is driving me crazy. So on that one, I'll take my seat. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now recognize the honourable member for Inverness.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I was touched by what the member from Pictou East was saying about Daewoo and the importance in the community of replacing the employment that was lost from Trenton Works. And Mr. Speaker, I think this is important that government, if there's going to be a hope for rural Nova Scotia, that government remembers rural areas and the need to support hubs within our province. Because if the government can find a way to create a major employer, support a major employer, there's a lot of other businesses that can feed off of that and build an economy in rural Nova Scotia. And of course, that was supported by the Industrial Expansion Fund, and we hope that it continues to be a good investment and that the company is successful. But Madam Speaker, I was also noting what my colleague from Glace Bay said about the MOU with municipalities. We recently had a federal budget where the federal government had promised not to reduce funds coming to Nova Scotia to protect the transfers that were coming to our province. But now municipalities this year are going to be faced with a challenge. They're going to receive less money because the MOU that had been set up and arranged is going to cost municipalities millions of dollars a year across the province to make up. But they can't make up that money by going into a deficit position, because under the Municipal Government Act, municipalities cannot enter deficit budgets. So it's going to lead to higher taxes for Nova Scotians. So if we look at, the resolution says that, that we should congratulate the government for honoring their commitment to make life better for Nova Scotians. There's a decision right there that is probably going to lead to higher taxes for Nova Scotians in the form of property tax. We saw a surplus announced earlier this week by the government, trumpeting success, but this surplus was built on an HST tax increase and increased personal income taxes by way of inflation and by better than expected economic activity. So these are really not achievements of the government to pat themselves on the back that they've achieved a surplus when it's coming from a tax increase or increased taxes because of the nature of what's going on in the economy. So I think we really have to ask ourselves in this province, is life better under this government? We've had an HST increase. We have $1 billion more in debt. User fees have gone up, but to me, more importantly about the user fees, government has refused to be transparent about the costs behind the fees. And if we don't understand what the costs are, how can we work at lowering the cost and the cost of those fees for Nova Scotians? We also notice that the size of government remains the same. And that is one of the challenges with this province, and why we have such an uncompetitive tax environment is because we have a big government. We need to start moving in the other direction. Now, Dominion Bond Rating Service had made the observation that since this government had taken power, they noticed a softening fiscal resolve. And those were their words, not mine. And that softening fiscal resolve has led to a change, not in the bond rating, but on the outlook for Nova Scotia bonds. And that's a sign that the people who follow the world of money are noting that there's a change in Nova Scotia, that things aren't as good as they used to be. And if this change continues, our rating for bonds, for Nova Scotia bonds, could decline. And as a result, the cost to borrow money for government in Nova Scotia will go up, and taxpayers will be paying more. So we need to start reversing that softening fiscal resolve. And I think to put this into perspective, if we look at the deficit that the government has right now, it's about 3% of the entire budget. If we go back to 1999, when Premier John Ham was our Premier, the deficit in this province was 10% of the budget. And within 3 years, we had a balanced budget. So I don't think that this should be as challenging as it's made out to be. If there's a sincere desire to reduce spending in government, we can find ways to do it. And we as an opposition party would be happy to try to help to find those ways and to make recommendations. And one I've just made is looking at the size of government. We have over 600 people that leave government every year in this province. They take a job elsewhere. They may be retiring from government. The point being is that those people are leaving government on their own accord. And if we look at reducing the size of government, it stands to reason that we can reduce some of those positions, and yet we're not hurting anybody. We're not hurting anybody in the sense that we're taking employment away from them. And I think we need to look at the direction that we've gone in the last couple of years. With another $1 billion of debt, the cost of that is approximately $30 million a year. If we're looking at secondary roads in the province, that's lost opportunity to pave probably about 120 kilometers of roads at a rate of $250,000 per kilometer. So in just 2 short years, we've racked up that debt, but we've also pulled away $30 million that could have gone towards something else. And that's money that's just going to go away in interest payments. There's no value for Nova Scotians in that. And Nova Scotians are also paying more tax now. We have an increase in the HST of 2%. There is a lack of employment in this province, which I believe is partly due to the size of government and the need for higher taxes, which presses down on the private sector, discouraging the people in our economy that we need to be encouraging by providing them with a good environment. We look at Daewoo in the Pictou County and the value of that operation. Companies like that look at our province and they look at other provinces and they look to find an environment where they're going to be treated favorably, because that takes some of the risk out of the equation for them. If they stand to make more profit, they can withstand losses on the other side of their business. And I think that government needs to do a better job of creating a more favorable environment here in this province relative to other provinces and other states in the U.S., other parts of the world. We need to really look at trying to live better within our means so that we can create a lower tax environment. Mr. Speaker, or Madam Speaker, my apologies. We must look at, is this government honoring its commitment? We've seen them promise a balanced budget and no tax increases, yet we see a budget that's in deficit position, and we also saw an increase in the HST as one of the taxes increased by government. Now, user fees went up, but what's striking to me, and I've mentioned it already, I asked the Minister of Finance to provide a report to this legislature so that Nova Scotians would know what caused the increase in the fees. One of our biggest problems in government is we don't look at government the same way an organization would that's competing in the private sector. And the reason this is important is because in the private sector, organizations have to compete against each other. And people always know they're getting the best price, the lowest price, because competition made that happen. With government, we don't have that. Now, government can keep providing services, but I think the least government can do is offer people an explanation of the cost behind services. It provides a benchmark, may allow us to reduce costs, and that just isn't true in user fees, that's true right across government. And that's something, no matter what party is in power in this province, that's a responsibility that I think is worth taking on, to make sure that, or to try to get a better handle on how government is spending its money, to question it. There's nothing wrong with questioning it. When we question things, we have an opportunity to make things better. So, Madam Speaker, If this government is sincerely concerned about making life better for Nova Scotians, they will try to do more with less. To create economic conditions that support risk takers, because these are the people, the entrepreneurs in our province, that create jobs. And another thing I think we need to do in this province, and we need everybody's help to do this, is to create a culture of entrepreneurship. We have a province where a lot of people grew up working in homes, where people were involved in the primary economy, natural resource based. We don't have a lot of entrepreneurs in Nova Scotia relative to other provinces. And that's something that I think would make a real difference if we get young people exposed to entrepreneurship and the potential of owning their own business, because people taking chances are what's going to drive this economy forward. And we would recommend this government get on with balancing the budget through spending restraint, to reduce the HST back to 13%, and to really look at making government smaller, a smaller piece of the pie, so there's more pie left to feed the other sectors of our economy here in Nova Scotia. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank all members for participating in tonight's debate, and I would like to now stand adjourned until tomorrow at the hour of 2 p.m. Thank you.